Morgan and Jared. Glad to have you here to the live weekly call with Morgan and Jared. We're going to dive deep today on accountability and how that fits into the 4 core pillars of Audit Experts, from mastering your mindset to communicating your culture, into knowing your science or your specialty, and how to monetize the marketing that goes with it. So thank you for joining us. As always, let us know if you're new, chat in, let us know you're new. And here's a quick intro.
3, 2, 1.
How to build your trust, your authority, and tell your story so that you're the differentiated provider in your community. Everything I'm doing in my practice, plus everything that my clients are doing across the country. I know you made the right decision for your practice. Just like my practice and the clients across the country, these marketing examples you took advantage of are going to help you grow in 2022 and beyond. All right, welcome back to Think Big. And this week I want to dive into my favorite, which is accountability. It's led me to build some of the best teams and best businesses and best organizations that I have seen. It's also made for high turnover. So with me today is the author of Why They Thrive, my people person, my team leader and trusted strategist, Morgan Hutchings.
I love that intro so much. That's such a good intro. Can everybody hear us okay? Go ahead and chat in. Steve, if you can hear us okay, let us know. Please, as Jared said, if anybody's new tonight, please go ahead and chat in. If you're watching the recording, we always love seeing those people that jump on YouTube as well and let us know. There's been a few people that have let us know.
Hundreds. We're over multiple hundreds now watching on YouTube.
It's been a lot of fun watching the YouTube growth. So
I think we're at a bad time though, because the live viewership versus the recorded viewership.
Yeah.
That or people just like to eat popcorn and watch us at 9 o'clock at night.
Yep. Well, we need to get on TikTok too. That's going to be the next thing. As Jared said, we're going to talk about accountability today. I think this is a topic that we've struggled with. Every business owner that I've ran into has struggled with. Oftentimes can turn you into the bad guy in your practice, business, organization that you're running. It's not always an easy thing to do. I think the hardest part of accountability that I had written down at the top of my page is the follow-up. Is probably the single hardest part of accountability. So
well, and if you've come on the journey with us these last few weeks, we went through vision and planning and purpose. We've gone through, methods to help you be a better leader, or not an unhealthy leader. And then things like consistency and proactive. And so these principles, right, help us run a good organization. But at the end of the day, right, just like, me going to the gym, we all fall off the bandwagon from time to time. And so how do we bring accountability back to your business, your practice, your organization, or even to ourselves as a leader? And I know you have some stories and some examples. So I'd love for you to share one of those with us.
Yeah, I think probably the number one thing I've seen, we just had a client in town these last few days, actually, and accountability was definitely one of the topics that we spoke about. And I think when I look at our journey together, I look at your clinic, I look at other people's clinics, other people's businesses that we've worked with, real estate. When there's a lack of accountability, there's always an increased rate of chaos. They almost go hand in hand. Anytime there's not accountability, whether that's on numbers, statistics, sales, emails gathered, whatever it is that they're supposed to be on top of, when there's not an accountability metric there, or there's not a person rather that's holding them accountable for something, there's always increased chaos.
So story today, and I love that, a person, right? Mm-hmm. So one of the core tenets of the entrepreneur operating system of my businesses, whether it's the coaching side, the national network, our audiology practices, real estate investing, whatever one of those businesses you're looking at, it's the accountability of who is responsible for certain core roles or core responsibilities. And it can only be one person, right? So how do you have multiple people in charge of the same thing?
Yeah. And again, that will cause chaos. We were just
Sure.
covering this with how many people inside an organization are in charge of sales. And yes, is that a part of someone's job? Is that a job duty to sell goods, sell products, communicate sales? Absolutely. But who's actually held accountable for the sales? Who's the one in your office, in your business, that when sales are down, that's the one individual that we go to.
Mhm.
And when there's more than one individual, we see a lot of finger pointing is
Yeah.
probably the.
Well, and the story specifically in my practice, my audiology clinic, is the fourth quarter of last year was a down quarter, right? And if we go back to accountability, whose fault was it?
Leadership, always.
Yeah, mine. You
Yeah.
can say mine.
Yeah.
So it's my
Jared.
fault, right? I'm the marketer. I'm in charge of making sure that there's plenty of flow coming into the business, plenty of leads, plenty of prospects raising their hand. And in fourth quarter, there wasn't. Now, I wanted to be unhealthy. Well, I was unhealthy, and I wanted to abdicate my responsibility, my accountability for marketing to somebody that wasn't prepared for the job. Right? I didn't want to do it. I had other focuses. I tried to abdicate that responsibility. And so when we look at the accountability chart, yes, I had somebody in marketing underneath me, but it was my job as the marketer. It was my job as the business owner to get that result. And so, looking back now, I wasted an entire quarter. I set myself back $1 million because I tried to abdicate the accountability for lead generation and marketing. And so if you're a business owner on here, chances are you're in charge of your marketing, you're in charge of your prospect campaigns. And so you need to look at yourself in the mirror and say, am I providing enough fuel to this business to get more growth? Am I generating enough leads and enough prospects? Or have I abdicated that? Or have I rightfully assigned it and then hold that one person, whoever it is, that one person accountable? But it's very easy for me to look at the entire team and say, well, everybody let us down, but it was really me abdicating that responsibility.
And I think that's probably the number one question. Anytime we talk about accountability, my team's not hitting their goals, what should I do? Morgan, Jared, what should I do? It's always like this question or this thought comes up of how do I hold my team accountable?
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a very specific distinction. What is the separation between accountability and responsibility? And I think it'd be fair to say your individual that was doing your marketing, it was their responsibility to do your marketing, meaning that when push came to shove and the marketing didn't work, who was going to be held accountable? It was Jared, because it was actually Jared's job to do the marketing, but he had delegated the tasks to somebody else. And so if you're on this phone call and you're not, let's say, the marketing director of a company, you might have responsibilities, but you're not going to be the one that's actually accountable. And there is a separation there. And I think that's really, really hard for a lot of business owners to understand. How do I hold my team accountable is really a very negative statement. It's a statement that if you look a little bit deeper about your business, who's at the tip of the spear, you look at your accountability chart, if you can switch that mindset on how do I hold them accountable versus how do I teach them to be responsible and realize that you're the one that is actually accountable. I was going to mention this, Jocko Willink's book, Extreme Ownership, is a must read for me, that it's always leadership that is responsible. So if you're going to hold anybody accountable, the first thing you have to do is hold yourself accountable, which is what you did with your marketing. It wasn't actually your marketing director, your marketing assistant that you had, and said, I didn't give them the tools for them to be successful, can't versus won't. They failed. What can I do on the next one to hold myself accountable so that I give the proper responsibilities for the next person?
So, I want to know, if you use an accountability chart, not an organizational chart, big difference. If you use an accountability chart, what is one thing that you are accountable for that slipped through the cracks this week? So chat it in below. What is one thing that either slipped through the cracks this week, or is consistently slipping through the cracks? That's a responsibility, a core role for your role in the practice.
Yeah.
Chat that in. Let's see where it is. I've shared my story, right? I let lead generation, I let prospect nurture slip through the cracks in December.
I love that you said that too, because the main difference that I found, accountability versus responsibility, is accountability goes to the person who will be reprimanded, in trouble, fired, written up if something goes wrong. And that's the reason that we use the accountability chart, is that when you put your name next to those responsibilities that you have, you are saying, you're signing that oath that I am accountable. When you're patient experience coordinator and there's a person in your office that has a bad experience, they are to be held accountable, because on your accountability chart,
Sure.
it's their name underneath that responsibility.
Awesome.
Versus the owner that dumps something onto an employee, tries to delegate without actually teaching them, and says, well, this is yours now, and then tortures them with their accountability.
So what about this, right? So I told you my story in fourth quarter. I abdicated that, right? I tried to push it onto somebody else. I have to own that, $1 million mistake, right? We learned from that. How do you, as an employee, Morgan, keep from me setting you up for failure in accountability? Right? How, I always want to give you more tasks. So how is this dynamic working where I don't just get to throw a bunch of stuff on your plate and then say, hey, you failed at X, Y, and Z, or you didn't get me the result. So what's this push-pull relationship?
Yeah, it's a good point, because employees will quickly realize, I got to get out of here, or I've got to figure out how to stop my owner from dumping all this stuff on me. And a lot of them will just quit. Just fair warning. I mean, if you're having people, one of the clients that was in town recently had a string of people that were quitting, and there was definitely a reason for that. For me, I think it comes down to one word, and that's expectations. And if you and I can agree, whatever the expectations are for said project, Excel spreadsheet, document the details on this, Morgan, I need you to file X and X paperwork. I need you to set the office up a certain way. I have to ask questions. And that is only on me, because if I don't, especially if I've been burned once, right? Fool me once, fool me twice kind of thing. If you've given me a project before and I didn't ask the questions, I just started marching, and then I didn't do a good job, and you held me accountable for something we agreed to or didn't agree to, the next time it comes up, I have to ask the right questions. And the only question to me that is truly important in that situation is, what do you expect from me? What does success look like? We have a client that's really famous for using that line, I think, of what's the good, better, best, and what does success look like? So regardless how big or small the project is, it is up to that employee to say, what does success look like, especially when they've never done the job before.
So another story that, right, when you were my director of operations in the clinic, and I would, I'll throw myself under the bus all day today. So I'm on a trend. We might as well go with it. Would you say back then, before EOS, before 90, that I tried to micromanage you, or did I try to hold you accountable, as compared to now where, do I hold you accountable or do I micromanage?
Yeah, it was definitely more of a the reason it was a micromanagement though is by no fault of your own. Like I think a lot of micromanage owners or managers get a bad rap because micromanagement it's looked at as this thing that you don't like me. I'm not doing a good enough job. But really, I think where micromanagement comes into play is when an owner or a manager doesn't have a system for watching over the people that work for them, meaning they don't have a 90, they don't have an entrepreneur operating system, or they don't have some sort of a back end. I mean, there's a million different types of 90s. There's Asanas, there's all kinds of task things that you can use to hold people accountable or watch their work. And I think that's the only time that micromanagement comes into play. And back then we didn't have a system. So it really wasn't. It goes back to assuming good intentions. Micromanagement's never fun. I think we've all worked in a place that they did have a micromanager as a manager or a business owner, but it's not because they want to destroy you. It's not because Jared wanted to make my life hell. It's not even because he didn't trust me. There was no system. There was no better way for him to understand what did Morgan do today than for you to shoot a text message, email, or grab me in the hallway and say, what did you do today? And no, that doesn't feel good. It's not a good way to manage your people. But if you feel like you're a micromanager or your people are telling you that you're a micromanager, I think it's because there's no system in place. There's no process.
I would agree. Or there's no 5, just to keep it in the EOS wheelhouse, there's no 5 core roles or responsibilities, right? Yeah. So it definitely pops into my head. Remember, you were there at the time. My manager, my DO, my top educator, my brother all walked out within 30 days, right? So I lost my entire leadership team, my entire management team. And I think that was one of the biggest inflection points in my practice that you can learn from and expedite your business, is to Morgan's point, because there wasn't a system, because I was reaching out and micromanaging only because I cared, right? Not with a negative will. I chased away 4 leaders in 30 days. And at that point, we had to have that meeting, right? And then you took over a year later, you left, and now we have EOS. And so the turning point in my life for accountability was reading Traction by Gino Wickman, was putting a system into place that made sense to me as an entrepreneur, putting core roles and responsibilities into place, and then holding the team accountable. And I think today, for the most part, it's fair to say that Morgan has 5 core responsibilities. He knows what they are. We check in quarterly. And at the end of the day, if I ever grab him in the hallway again and say, what the hell did you do today for me? He can go back to, I did these 5 core roles and responsibilities.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think how I know that we've really nailed that among everything else is the fact that I say no to you all the time. Like all the time, Jared will say, what about this? What about clinics over here? What about this new sales pipeline? What about this new marketing piece? Man, wouldn't it be cool if we built this thing? Hey, the clinic needs this thing. And every now and then I'll say, that's a great idea, Jared. I don't know who you're going to give it to, but it's not going to be me. And I think the only reason I can do that is because there's a process, because there's a way for me to say, does that fit inside of my wheelhouse of what I'm good at, what you pay me for, what we've agreed to do, what my expectations are.
So when you think about why we all work, or especially why your team members work for you, there's three premises, right? They work for mastery of their subject, autonomy in their role, and for the greater purpose. And so if we can simplify down to those 3 roles, Morgan, do you today, more so than in all the different companies of mine you've worked for, have the answer to those 3 questions?
About mastery, autonomy? Yeah. Yes, but the reason is because we've had conversations. And I think that's why, like you know, I probably beat this horse too much when I talk about communication, but this has been 6 years of a ride now, 5 years of a ride. And every time we've gotten better at it. Every time Jared says, Morgan, there's an opportunity for us to change more lives by starting this company. We could make more money. There is a problem in the world that needs to be solved by such and such company. There are sometimes months and months of conversations. Sometimes we've had them for years before that action plan. The school comes to mind because the school isn't actually physically in place yet. And we've been talking about that for over a year at least now. And back in the day, 5 years ago, it would have been Jared rowing alone, where he's at the front of the boat saying, this is where I've got to take my people and I don't have anybody else to help me. So I've just got to start paddling alone. And now sometimes those conversations feel like friction. Sometimes it feels like I'm paddling in the other direction, but I know you're going to hold me accountable.
Yeah.
And if I say, yes, Jared, let's go start this new business. Let's go do this new thing. Let's go start this new project. Let's sell this new thing, this new product. And I don't understand the inside and the outside, I'm going to be held accountable for something I didn't agree to. And that's never going to feel good for either one.
And I think that's just the difference, right? Because I want to simplify it down to and remove the human element, right? And Morgan, the master communicator, author of Why They Thrive, book's up there. Have you seen your book up there?
Yeah. Right above my, it's like a table right above my head. Right
so if you haven't got a copy, whytheythrive.com will tell you how to understand your team's instincts, how to avoid burnout as an entrepreneur, how to build a rock star autonomous team that can help you with this burnout. So I remember those days, right? Chase the leadership team away. I was at the front rowing and it was exhausting.
Yeah.
And today I do 10 times more work and 10 times more businesses and 10 times more action than I did back then, but I feel way more energized, way less burned out. And I think it's because of this, you know, the 3 premises of having a team that, you know, is masters of their craft, has autonomy in their role. And I truly mean autonomy in their role, and then is connected to our overall purpose. And I'm seeing that even today on social media, right? My team at the clinic is liking our investment group. Our investment group is liking our network. Our network is liking our coaching group. Yeah. And just seeing it all and all that energy come together because they understand the greater purpose is fantastic. In this accountability realm, though, where does it turn negative, or why does it cause higher turnover?
Yeah, I think that really goes back to the mindset. So where you were talking about the purpose, the autonomy, and I think the passion, correct? When you have those 3 things, when you have somebody that's aligned to that degree, I think they're willing to hold themselves accountable. Like
Mhm.
I look at the people that truly that we work with every single day. We eat lunch a ton with a few of your doctors, and those people truly are aligned. And when something goes wrong in your practice, they're some of the first people to say, I could have done better. I know I screwed this thing up. Even when maybe they weren't even close to whatever problem it was that was happening, they're the first ones to jump on the grenade and say, I think I could have helped by doing this. And so that does go back to me. It goes back down to that purpose idea. It goes back down to autonomy of saying, this is also my company, even though they don't have ownership, that I do work here. I love the people I work with. I love what I do. I love who I do it for. So if you have somebody that's bought into that level, it's a great marriage and it's awesome. But when you don't have employees that are bought into that level, it can become very, very toxic, because what they assume is that you're watching over me. I'm not doing a good job. I'm a failure. When you give me a project and I don't do it your way, you take it away from me. And they don't see that as master delegation. They don't see that as maybe I gave you a project that I shouldn't have. And that was really what prompted the book of all things for me when we first started talking about this, was all the jobs that I had worked in my life to get through college and high school, from landscaping to painting houses to construction to, we joke all the time about digging ditches, and everything I've seen, all the bosses that I've had, how miserable the bosses were, but also how miserable the employees were. And I knew there was something in that until I met you, and I discovered it wasn't that you always had all of the answers. And sometimes when you were out front paddling alone to try and get to your destination, you were just trying to solve problems along the way. And sometimes those solutions to problems bred chaos, because back then there wasn't EOS, there wasn't 90, there wasn't a structured system of Jared has an idea and here's how we're going to solve this idea. And so there wasn't that idea of accountability. And I think some of the most upset that I've ever seen employees where this is the most toxic is when somebody listens to a phone call like this, or they watch this video and they say, dang, I want to do that. I'm going to go back and I'm hold my team accountable. And it's no different than taking an 18-year-old kid that's never been held accountable for anything in their life, been arrested, been on drugs, been drinking alcohol, done everything they shouldn't have done in their life, and then walk into their life at 18 and say, now I'm going to hold you accountable. And it's no different for your people. If you have the idea that starting Monday morning, you're going to hold everybody accountable for all things, you're going to have staff walk out on you. You're going to have your management quit on you. You're going to have a bad time because you can't flip that switch. And it's taken years and years and years. The side of accountability comes with a side of trust. So if you want to hold them accountable for something, you've got to give them a small project first, plan an event, hold something, go to the kite festival, all the great things that I've seen your doctors do. Give a little bit of that trust. And when things don't go the way you want them to go, sit down, have a good conversation. You have to teach your people that you do have good intentions behind it, and you hold them accountable because you want growth, not because you want to punish them.
Well, and I think that's right. If we go back to healthy, unhealthy ownership and leaders, right, the idea of accountability does come off as a punishment,
It's
or
like a finger wag.
Yeah,
You did something wrong.
versus I want to hold you accountable and help you achieve. I want to teach you and mentor you.
Yeah.
And when people come here for their private day, and I think even at Mastermind too, that's coming up for our private clients, to bring people in and teach them about this idea of you go from business owner and business manager to mentor.
Yeah.
And if you want to elevate yourself, you elevate yourself by being a mentor. You elevate yourself by contributing back to your team and back to your people. And it truly is, even for me, who I consider myself an introvert, not the greatest of people persons, but to watch people develop and grow, to watch you write the book, Why They Thrive, to watch, I heard today Reese is publishing his book.
Yeah.
And to watch that mentorship grow, that's the exciting part at this point. And we had Dr. Kummel Elliott in town this week talking about this idea of fulfillment versus achievement, right? And I think I can say I've achieved very great things in my life, in my businesses, and with my team. But now the fulfillment angle arises by watching the next generation, helping the team members achieve everything they want personally, professionally, financially, and in their contributions to the community. So accountability to me, I need some tips, right? For our viewers today, for those that watch on recording, what are the accountability tips that you want to share with them?
Yeah. So first and foremost, maybe the biggest, probably the most important tip for accountability is create a process. For us, it's EOS. The entrepreneurial operating system will show you. It literally will give you the road, the road that you need to follow to hold your people accountable. That includes weekly meetings, to-dos, 90-day projects that they need to complete. Everything that you could ever want to know about your business is literally in that software. And it's systematized. So it actually has steps you have to follow in order to be successful. There's a million books you can read. They have a fantastic YouTube channel, and you can absolutely reach out to myself or Jared and find out more. But you do need a system. You can no longer operate under the guise of you are the entrepreneur, green bar, visionary person who's willing to walk through hell or high water to build your business and expect everyone else behind you to just fall in line and figure it out behind you. The jobs that are out there in America right now are too good. They're paying too high. The benefits are too amazing. Health insurance, Starbucks is paying for college now. I mean, if you think people will walk through fire for you, you're wrong. They will, if you treat them well, you give them the process and you show them the vision. But the days of the entrepreneur starting a business and then finding people to latch on to that entrepreneur and follow them are gone. There's too many other people out there that will treat your people right, including better pay. So first and foremost is you need a process. And I've seen 90 do amazing things. I don't think we've ever had a client in the 4 years, 3 years now that I've watched you work with EOS that has ever signed up with an EOS account, followed those steps, read the books, really taken it into heart and implemented it and not grown their business by at least 25%.
So the next thing that, comes to my mind, and I see we have some chat in. So if you still want to share, your accountability, things that slipped through your accountability last week or consistently, if you'll voice those, we can help you and your organization address them, delegate them, or elevate them so that they do get solved and you are free to achieve within your own practice and your own role. Is there a checkup, Morgan, to check on the status of an organization to see if we're slipping on accountability or vision? How do we check up on what we're doing?
Yeah. And again, EOS has amazing tools there where you can have quarterly conversations where you should be meeting with the whole staff quarterly. You should also be meeting one-on-one quarterly. We suggest monthly meetings. I don't think that that's inside of EOS. I know their quarterly meetings are, but we also meet monthly with the employees. And then Colby, you know that I love Colby. That's a huge premise of the book. And the reason that I wrote the book is this idea that we all have natural instincts. And so you do have Colby reports at your fingertips, the Colby B's and the C's, which we just talked to Jared's staff about. If you saw those Instagram videos the other day, that can really help reset the culture as well and make sure that we're all on the same page. So before we really get to that stepping stone of now I need to hold you accountable, again, it goes back to what I told Jared. If we're going to agree on anything, I have to understand the expectations. And you can get that done through quarterly conversations and Colby B's and C's.
Well, and the other one that comes, because it's the end of the quarter, and every quarter we send out organizationalcheckup.com. And, we just had our highest score. We had 6 straight quarters. We're at 97 now out of 100. And just to see the team that is there's been people that have come, there's been people that have left. The team that is there is so aligned. And by alignment, we can now accelerate. By accelerate, we're going to expand. We'll be in Arizona. We're going to, go to other states in the Southwest as well. So I think that there is a method to measuring, right? And what you measure, you can make progress with. And so I really need, whether you have an internal, questionnaire, whether you use organizational checkup, I think you would be surprised. I was shocked that I thought I was this great business leader. I had great success. I had a multiple $1-million company, and yet my team wasn't aligned. And that organizational checkup was a wake-up call. And then the system of EOS allowed me to take it from there and scale. Yeah. So definitely put those tools. We had some great tools. Organizationalcheckup.com, your Colby A's, B's, and C's for your team. If you don't know what they are, if you don't understand them, whytheythrive.com, request a copy of Morgan's book, and you will have the knowledge you need to build an autonomous team that helps you avoid burnout, helps you avoid bankruptcy, and helps you live your best life. I think both of those tools, your contributions have been amazing. So thank you. And I see some chat ins. So one of them right there is this idea of assigning a task to a worker and it hasn't happened, right? And it's now been 90 days.
Yeah.
Right. So what is that like? How do 90 days go by and now we're addressing it?
Yeah, I think this topic, the after the fact topic, meaning it's been 90 days since I asked you to do something and you haven't done it, is probably the saddest. It's probably the number one phone call I get about, Morgan, what do I do with my team? My numbers are down, whatever's happening. Morgan, what do I do? How do I hold them accountable? Always comes out of somebody's mouth, a manager or an owner. And it's probably the saddest. Truly, I feel sad for the owner because I know I've seen behind the scenes with you that they are genuinely discouraged. They're wondering, why did I start all this? What is the point of anything? And then I feel bad for the employee too, because they didn't know the expectations. And the saddest thing of all for me when it comes to accountability is somehow accountability is always somehow equal to, in a lot of the people that I've seen mention this, punishment. And that truly makes me sad, because I think if you visualized, if you're lucky enough to have kids in this world, I think if you visualized your son or daughter or child in that employee's in that employee's shoes, and you looked at them and said, I want to hold them accountable, would you look at your own child and say, I want to punish you? Or would you look at them and say, I want to help you? And I really, truly, it makes me sad to think that as owners, as managers, we want to punish the people that we've hired. I mean, I truly, and I've been there. Trust me, I've been there. I've been frustrated at employees that it's been 90 days and they didn't get done what they were supposed to get done. But it's sad that somehow that word of accountability has also been morphed into, Morgan, when do I write them up? When do I have a conversation? When do I? And I always get back to, I think I do a good job of getting them back to, what could you have done better? So it's been 90 days for this person that chatted in and it hasn't been done. My first question for every owner, every manager on the face of this planet is, what could you have done better? Not the employee that failed or didn't fail, or however you're choosing to look at that situation. For you, who is the leader, who is the one that is actually to be held accountable, what could you have done better? And that's really where we get into the conversation of can't versus won't. As a leader, did you give them all the tools for success? Did you give them the expectations of the job? Did you agree on what good, better, and best looked like, or what success looked like? Did you set them on the path for success? Or did you say, I need you to do this thing, best of luck? And then you hid from it, didn't check in, didn't follow a process. 90 days went by, and now it's time to hold them accountable or punish them. And that's really, I mean, that's a sad, it's a twisted, it's a circle that you'll never get out of unless, as an owner, manager, or leader, if you're watching this video right now, you don't understand when something goes wrong in your business. If the first question that you ask yourself isn't, what could have I done better? You don't belong in the leadership position.
It's a little dramatic, huh?
I'm serious. I think you've made massive changes, by the way.
I have,
because I hear you ask yourself that all the time. I don't know what I did wrong. I don't know what I could have done better.
Sure. No, it's definitely key, right? We are always going to be with our business. We are the ones that have to change. I tell the story often with EOS specifically. I thought EOS was going to help my team keep up with me. And what EOS did was slowed me down and put structure to my craziness and my visionary entrepreneur life. We do have a couple, there's some, specifically a director of operations, there's a couple marketing people, team leaders. I truly would like to know if you will share in something that you would like to have guidance or help on accountability, right? And I know you work with visionary owners, I know you work with entrepreneurs, but what is the nugget? What is the nugget you need tonight? Have you learned from Colby? Have you learned from EOS? Have you learned from 90? Or do you still have questions on this idea of accountability? So chat in if there's something you need to learn. As far as this person that made it 90 days, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I know it a little bit more intimately. I know who it is.
Yeah.
I look back and say SMART goals could have helped.
Sure.
Right? Because we thought we had agreement with this employee. We thought that it would take traction right away. We waited too long. But what if we would have had a very specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely goal?
Yeah.
And we could have said you're off track. What if we were tracking each week whether those social media posts were happening?
Yeah, absolutely.
Would it have taken us 90 days to know something's awry and that we needed to address it?
No, definitely not. I mean, hopefully not.
Hmm.
Right. I think what you're going back to is, and SMART goals are amazing, but what is the process?
Sure.
When do we know that we should be checking back in? How do we know when the project is done? How do we know whether we're on track or off track? And setting those SMART goals that are measurable and we're putting a timeline to it are a very smart way of.
It is, but I'm really going to tracking, right? So yes, you need a process, and yes, you need a goal. But what is the data point that you track to know if you're on or off, right? So like you might track pounds lost or inches lost if it's weight. You might do pant size if it's, about health and wellness. You might do number of pounds that you can bench press, right? There's a measurement tool involved. And do we measure the important things in our businesses that get us the result we want? Right. And if we were measuring, and I think I'll bring it up, right? You had a data point in our coaching side.
Yeah. On the Odd Expert.
On the Odd Expert side, on the coaching side, that you were supposed to do an action. And it was 0, and then it was 0, and then it was 0. And
3 weeks in a row that it was 0.
Yeah. So, I mean, I could have walked in there and chopped some heads off, or we created an issue out of it and we solved the issue, right?
Yeah.
Because we tracked it.
Yeah.
And you forced us to play that long game versus just never putting it on there.
Yeah. And I think what's really tough is I have a hard time believing in 90, when there's that scorecard that's weekly, when the average owner sees 3 weeks of zeros, they don't see an opportunity to help somebody. And I think that's where I go back to, how do we help these owners realize that when you are checking in, when you are creating a timeline of we're off track or we're on track, if you're using EOS and you see that big red exclamation point instead of the green thumbs up, it's not an opportunity to rip any heads. It's actually an opportunity to turn your mentor, put your mentorship hat on and go to work as that person's mentor and find out what could I have done better. And I mean, Steve chatted in and answered his question exactly. He knows what went wrong. I think it's just about being conscious. And when you're in that moment, especially when you're giving your employees a new to do, you're giving them a new thing. If you can use these tools, if you can have the tools at the tip of your fingers, meaning if you can have SMART spelled down the side of your paper, if you can have 90 open, if you can, Janet, your wife is famous. One of the things I still use that she taught me was, what did you hear me say? Right? Isn't that what she always, at the end of a conversation is like, well, what did you hear me say? And are we in agreement? Because what came out of my mouth may not have went into your brain the way that I meant it to. And you might be a figurative versus a non-figurative listener, right?
Yep.
A literal listener. So I
think for me, right,
I have an example, by the way. If nobody's going to chat in, I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, so I won't use any names, but there's a clinic that we work with, audiology clinic, and the individual who's in charge of onboarding and training new employees is out. They're gone. So that task of onboarding and training the next employee who's showing up on Monday has been given to, tossed to, delegated to, whatever you want to call it, another employee. And they reached out to me and said, I would love some tips on onboarding employees. Now, how long have you and I spent studying the science of how do you onboard properly a new employee?
Oh, I think it's ongoing, but over
Probably
years.
2 years.
Yeah.
2 years. You've been doing it for 10 years. I've been actually studying, documenting, and watching for at least 2 years. We have film, audio recordings, the firing, the hiring, everything has been recorded for 2 years. And so how unfair is that, right? Because the new person who's going to be in charge of onboarding the employee who's showing up on Monday, I guarantee you 30, 60, or 90 days from the day that they're employed is going to be held accountable for onboarding this new employee, even though it's not within the roles and the responsibilities. It's not their job. They were never trained on how to train somebody. So now they're totally going to be set up for failure. And that's all coming to a head on Monday.
Sure.
And it's just not fair. Again, we're going to continue that cycle of not only are we putting our newest employee who's going to be held accountable for being up to speed, I'm sure in 30 to 60 days, they're going to be held accountable, but the person that's doing the training whose job is not to train and onboard new employees is also going to be held accountable. And, I can see the future with my crystal ball, and it's not going to be a Disney ending there. It's not going to be a good time.
Sure. Well, the one thing I think, so this topic of accountability, right? That is going to be where rubber meets the road in your practice. And if you allow things to slip through accountability, if you allow bad behaviors, if you allow not hitting goals, if you start moving the needle, you're setting yourself up for failure, because you are teaching a culture of not holding the team accountable, and you don't want to do that. I've been there, I've done that, I've changed my goals, I've lowered my goals, I've tried to problem solve, I've let people stay on the team too long. I would rather you stick with your goals, hold people accountable, and solve the underlying issue. And for me, what I was getting at with the weekly tracking, right, is you want to fail fast.
Yeah.
And what EOS and tracking your numbers allows you to do is to determine smoke signals, right, before something turns into a full-on wildfire blaze in your business. You can see the smoke first. And what tracking your data allows you to do is to see where the smoke is starting to arise, so you can put the fire out before it turns into a huge blaze. And so what are the data points that you're tracking that result in 80% of your success? And how do you put those fires out faster rather than slower? And what I do know is if your team can hit your goals 1 week, they can hit them every week.
Yep.
Right? If they're truly achievable, right, which is part of SMART goals, if they're truly achievable and they achieve them once, they can and should achieve them every time. And if they're not achieving them every time, there is an underlying issue. And if you don't hold the team accountable and you don't solve the underlying issue fast, you're setting yourself up either for extremely slow growth or a decrease in growth.
Yep. It's so true. It's so true. And it really, you can see it coming too, can't you? Because when you watch those numbers go red, 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 and we see the scores from the meetings, or we talk to the owners, we talk to the managers, and they're just like, I can't get anywhere. The team's not doing a good job. The team's not doing this, the team that they, you can see where that, where that rubber is going to take them.
So I mean, more stories for Steve, who's being very interactive tonight. So thank you. We got to send Steve a gift for his being interactive. But for Steve specifically, how do you change next week? What are you doing different next week, 7 days from now, than you've done the last quarter? What is the one data point that you can track to say if we're back on track or if we're still off track in this journey? What's the one thing, Steve? Block calendaring. It's a win. So I would say, yes, that's a great strategy to block calendar, but what is the one data point? Do we have a social media post by next Tuesday?
Yeah, just one,
right?
One a week is a great start.
You got to start somewhere. You got to walk before you can run. So my question back next Tuesday, I'm not letting Steve in the meeting unless by next Tuesday, he has his social media post done.
Yeah, he's not going to get his prize. That's
no prize. No prize.
I like that. I like that. That's good.
Right. And what about this? What about this negative? You mentioned negative owners, negative takeaway. Yeah. What about positive reinforcement? And what about this catching people when they're winning?
Yeah. So I have a fourth tip here, and it is be positive. I want to recap these, by the way, before we're done. That's not always easy. So if you've read the 1 Minute Manager, one of the parts of the 1 Minute Manager is to catch people doing something good, to give that positive feedback. And the literal story there that I've seen Jared do is I've actually seen you hide money. Well, I thought this was really cool. I've seen Jared
Don't tell the IRS that. You can't say hide money around
I've seen Jared accidentally drop money in specific places, like $100 bills, $10 bills, whatever. It doesn't really matter, in places that would lead a person to success. So for instance, at the end of the day in the office, we have the end of the day procedures where they need to get things done before they can go home. And the only way they can do these procedures is to open up the one drawer, grab the alcohol out of the drawer, clean this station off, put the alcohol back. So right there, taped to the bottle of alcohol, is a $100 bill. And that is fun. That's enjoyable, especially at the end of the day for an employee, where especially it's been like a long Monday and they find that $100 bill there with a note from their owner saying, good job. That feels good. And you're catching them winning. You're catching them doing something good. And you're reinforcing good behavior. Much, much smaller than that, but just as important. I promise you, for any of you that have employees, if you see something good and you have that in your mind that you're proud of that employee and you're not saying those words, meaning if you have things that you like about an employee and you don't say it to the employee, that means nothing to anyone, right? I think that's easily known, but it's not always easily done. And so even just a simple word to your employees about how proud you are, if you are doing regular meetings, for instance, Jared has his monthly meetings with the whole staff, it's a great opportunity to recognize people. It's a great opportunity, whether you're doing Jared's awesomeness report, which is showing people every single month who's doing what in their personal life and their work life and who's awesome, or you're just calling a company meeting and giving rewards to people that are awesome on your team, financial or non-financial. Sometimes it's just recognition. People need that. People care about that. I promise you, even though as an owner, you might not think that's important, us employees care about that type of thing. We care about
and I think, I'm sure an employee will watch this, but I am extremely grateful for the team I have, the partners I have, the clients, the donors, everybody in the sphere, right? But saying those words and saying those words enough is just hard. I'm a very busy person, and I make that excuse of I don't have the time to always think about it, right? So one of my accountability metrics, one of the data points that I need to track is, am I going to my monthly meetings? Am I having my leadership events? Am I saying thank you? Am I contributing? Because if I don't have that accountability and I'm not checking off that box each day, week, or month, right, that appreciation gets lost. And what I would challenge each of you owners to do is be grateful for what you do have, and then help take the team to the next level.
Yeah. And I just, again, EOS is a great tool to give that 1 minute praising, to give that feedback to the team, whether that's in headlines or if it's in a simple to-do to get somebody petty cash or something. EOS is another tool where you can actually schedule that out. I think when Steve chatted in and said block calendaring, what we're all on the same page on is that you do need to have that process side of things. Mm-hmm. And EOS is another great tool for you to actually regularly give that praise back to your people.
I love it. We're going to have a chat in. So next week, right, we're going to have people that have committed to putting a social media post out there. That's the big one, right?
Yep.
We have holding the reds in their data to 3 or less, solving issues immediately. I know you want to recap a couple of things, but what I truly want to take, if you're a business owner watching this on recording and you're looking at yourself saying, I am burned out, I'm frustrated, my team can't keep up, they don't understand me, why aren't I more successful, why can't I be home for dinner, whatever those entrepreneurial visionary complaints are, the person accountable is you. And what you can do is build systems, process, and accountability to get yourself to the next level, to get your business to the next level. And we have the tools, we have the coaching, we have the mastermind groups, we have published books by people like Morgan that can help you solve that problem. So your next step is to decide how you're going to level up with us, how you're going to participate with us, what meetings you're going to show up to, and how serious you're going to take this level of accountability to grow your business and to achieve more and to think big.
Yeah, I love that. Now I don't want to recap because that was
so good.
That was so beautiful.
I can end it right there. I can chop it off later.
Good. Okay, good. So here's the 4-step help tips that we've got here for accountability. Keep in mind, this isn't something that you should go back to your team on Monday and say, boom, you're all held accountable. That's not a good idea. It's going to cause your people to walk out. You're not going to have a good time. Step 1, find a process. Our suggestion, Jared's suggestion, is to follow that entrepreneur operating system. If you want more information on that, reach out to me. I'd love to talk to you about that. Follow a process. Find a process and follow a process. 2, check in regularly. If you have that process, inside of that process should be regular check-ins. So whether that's weekly lunches with your people, monthly, and then quarterly, you do need to check in so we don't go 90 days like the example that we had before we've actually gotten to the smoke, before it's a fire. Number 3, ask yourself, what could I have done better? If you're not thinking that anytime something goes wrong in your business, to Jared's point, you're hurting. You're hurting, your business is hurting, and your employees are hurting, all because you're not willing to ask yourself that tough question. Number 4, be positive. I suggest you use I language. What could I have done better for you? Where did I fail you? Be positive with your accountability. Don't walk in there and think this form of punishment is going to help anybody. Walk in there as a mentor and use I language and be positive.
I love it. So mentorship, think big, hold yourself accountable, and you can achieve everything you dreamt of when you started that business. Thank you for joining us this week, and we'll see you again in the future.
Boom.